So welcome everybody. I am very, very pleased today to have Corbin. Can you give us a wave there, Cory? Cory Geis has come back to join us for another great session. He's been with us before. For those of you that have never met Cory, he's been calling since about 1985. He's been a member of Color Lab since the early 90s. He was, I'm not sure if you still are, but you were vice chairman or chairman of the schools committee that's calling to the schools and getting our message out of what modern square dancing is in the world these days, as opposed to what was being taught in the schools for a long time. He's a very prolific recording artist. I think you're recording on about 6 or 7 different labels now, including, I think, your own Breaking Records. Is that your label, or is that just what you put it out as? I'm not sure.
That's Breaking Records is the name of a column that I wrote for American Square Dance.
Oh, okay.
Silver Sounds is my home label.
Yeah, so Silver Sounds, but he's recorded on a number of different labels. Basic through A2, I think. But one of the things that he is most noted for is setting the template, or rather setting the standard for what is handy-capable square dancing, wheelchair dancing, and the total integration and inclusion of square dancing right across the gamut of life. And his ability to share his passion, his love, his talent of what he does with others and having them enjoy it is what makes Cory not only a pleasure to dance to, but a pleasure to have here today. And one of the things that we were talking about in saying, well, what are we going to get Cory to talk about next was, oh, I didn't expect that. Great topic. I didn't expect that. And that's what's led to today's session. I didn't expect that, because we've all had those I didn't expect that moment on the dance floor. So without further ado, please welcome Cory Geis.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see a lot of familiar faces. And boy, I'll tell you, this topic, expect the unexpected, or I also say the darndest things happen at a square dance. What I'm going to cover in this session, I know they don't do a lot at color schools. They may be getting more of this in the color schools and colleges now, but I know when I went, they definitely didn't have it, and up to a few years ago. But in expect the unexpected, a lot of this is going to come back on the color and our approach and delivery and how we deal with expecting the unexpected. When things come up, there's a slang here in America called Murphy's Law. And it's, if anything can go wrong, it'll go wrong. And some of the craziest things in my 37 years of calling, probably 40 years of square dancing, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. And I talked to a few of my color colleagues and coaches, and a lot of them had similar stories. So with the approach and delivery of how we deal with the unexpected has so much to do with personality. So I'm going to try to, how do I handle things that happen at my, oh yeah, you can put the first one up if you want. The first slide. I guess that's something new. What do I do at mine? I handle mine with humor. And I actually don't know what I do without my sense of humor. I know there's not much that I can fall back on, definitely not my looks and my charm. But so here under expect the unexpected, you see what I'm seeing here. This is things that I'm going to talk about. Dancers, the dance halls, other callers, students, officers, arguments and disagreements, surprises, definition, joke, bookings, the kitchen. These are callers' equipment. This is just stuff that I sat down and was thinking of. And as you're listening and watching this Zoom session, you're going to be coming up with your own stuff that you've already seen as a dancer and as a caller. You might even have more stuff to add on to this, which when I'm done, I would love to hear some of the stories. When these things happen or different incidents occur, how do you handle it? Now, listen, we've all been there. There's been nights when we're driving home after the dance and we're flying high. We were thinking we were the best caller in the world. We were just, it was the happiest night of our life driving home after that dance. And then there'll be dances that we're driving home and we want to drive the car right off of a cliff or into a wall. We all have nights like these. I'm here to tell you, we're all human. Don't let this stuff get to you. I've seen callers and people who make mistakes and it just eats at them. Let it go. Oh my gosh. Remember, for the majority, square dancing is a hobby. I'm going to say that again. For the majority, square dancing is a hobby. And when I read some of these posts on Facebook and these people who are asking questions and they want a simple answer and callers write 3 or 4 book novel answers, it's a hobby. This seminar could be done in several parts with various sequels and a mini series. It could also just be a session on me telling some of my trial and error stories over the past few decades and you sharing yours. So here's how I'm going to do this particular session. I'm going to touch lightly on a couple topics and give you the info so you can research it on your own. So I'm going to talk about personalities, different personalities, dealing with difficult people. I'm going to talk to you about time management and prioritizing. And then I'm going to talk about scenarios and situations. But first, do you have slide number 2 there? I got to tell you all this. And some of you might already know this and some of you don't. Callers wear different hats. What does that mean? We all have many responsibilities that some dancers may acknowledge, but most don't. See a guy or a girl picking up a microphone and calling alum and lefts, do-si dos and weeds. As once again, I was just sitting down and these were a dozen that came to my mind. And I'm sure if you sat and looked at this list, you could come up with more. Callers, we are entertainers. We're teachers. We sometimes are officers. Yeah, like constables. Break it up over there, break it up. We're the janitor. How many of you have to, if there's a leak, you're the one fixing the leak. You're the one mopping stuff up at a dance. We're MCs. We're like the masters of ceremony sometimes. There's been many times that I had no clue that I thought I was just going to call a dance. I showed up and they're like, oh, by the way, we're doing a contest tonight and you're MCing it. You're the host. And I'm like, what? Thank God for a sense of humor. And I have a lot of spontaneity in me and I can roll with the punches a lot of times. But I've seen guys and girls in this calling gig of ours who aren't very spontaneous. And if it's not in a list, if it's not organized, if somebody throws a wrench in our gears, they don't know what to do. How about, speaking of gears, how many times have you been a caller and something went buzz, zap, and boom? Maybe your equipment. Next thing you know, you're a mechanic. I myself am not a mechanic, but I am a master at the duct tape and staple gun. How many of the callers out there act as guidance counselors? Absolutely. I'll have dancers coming to me with their problems. Next thing you know, I'm a priest. A lot of times we callers, and if you're a newbie caller, you might not have gotten into this yet, we're the referee. Sometimes I think I need to go to these square dances and have a whistle and a clipboard, breaking up fights. Callers are also party planners. A lot of times, a lot of the stuff I talk about tonight, you have to also consider, do you call for a caller run club where you're the caller, you're in charge, you get to do everything, which I personally like, or are you a hired, well, we call them hired guns sometimes, are you hired to come in with a club and the officers hire you and it's a officer run club. So there's 2 different types of clubs. Party planners, there's sometimes I'm packing up my equipment at night, getting ready to leave, and the dancers will say, oh, by the way, we're having a meeting after here. We want you to stick around because we're having the St. Patrick's Day party and we want you to plan it. Great. I'm a wedding, something sudden. Tech support. Hey, there's many times I've been a taxi driver. There've been kids that didn't have the parents come to pick them up, and the parents call me up and say, can you drive the kids home? Sometimes if you're doing a square dance and there's a dinner, next thing you know, they want you to do the invocation. I'm a minister all of a sudden. Interior decorator, definitely. Sometimes there's a party going on and it's a Hawaiian luau theme. I bring tons of stuff. Being an activity director, and Daryl was talking about working with seniors not long ago here. And, you know, I've worked with seniors in my professional life, and being a color as a hobbyist, there's many things that just pop up at the last minute. So you can take that slide down, pretty please. Although that looks better than having to look at me. So, as you know, we colors wear different hats, and I'm sure you can come up with more from what I just listed there. So the one thing I want to talk about is personalities. In the years that I've been in calling square dances, I've dealt with pretty much every personality I can think of. I've dealt with people with mean personalities. I've met people with absolutely splendid people. They're just awesome to work with. I've worked with people who are nitpickers. If I call something wrong, they're the first one in my face telling me I called something wrong. And then I'm like, oh, so we're keeping score. I've dealt with people with multiple personalities. I've dealt with people with no personalities. So if you could, I have another little chart that I have here. We're going to have personalities that most of us have. Now, the next slide that's going to come up are colorful personalities. And if you go to your search engines, or if you go to Bing or Google and type in personality tests and quizzes with colors, there's all different types. But this is one that I've had being in management, being an activities director. I've had activity aides in therapeutic rec over my years. And when you look at these, I want you to look at all these colors. And while you're reading these, you'll notice that some folks, most of us, are not just one color. For example, I'll be the guinea pig here. I will admit, I am a blend mix of the blue personality and the orange personality. That's a nice compliment. Being an art major, blue and orange are the complementary colors on the color wheel. But some there are people out there that we don't know a lot about their personality. We just think, oh, here comes old stubborn Stu. He's up to something now. Or here comes that one lady. She's always emotional about something. We as callers and leaders need to step back and have to recognize that not everyone thinks like me or you or us. If someone, let me ask you this. If someone, you don't have to answer this, but in your head, if someone criticizes your calling, do you snap back at them right away? Or do you smile and say nothing? Or do you take what they're saying into consideration? How do you deal with it? Now, as you're checking out these colors, and like I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, you can go and look up personality with color. There's all different colors with different things. This is one I like and I've used for a long time. But which color are you? That's what you've already pretty much figured out. Or what colors are you? Now, here comes the fun part. What color is your partner or colors? There's almost like there's a primary and a secondary. I'm very much more orange as my predominant color, and probably blue being the art major, and having art and music and dance and theater in my life, well, sports too, have a lot of blue. But then after you figure out what your partner's color is, what color, using these colors, is another color that maybe you work with? What color or colors is your club president that you have? And I know some people are shaking their heads up and down, left and right, and just snickering because you know these people well better than I know these people. I can make sure that everybody gets a copy of these also. You can take that one down. We'll talk about personalities a little bit more. We'll get to the next one here in a little bit. So, having said that, there's always people with different personalities. And you know who they are. You know who the people are that come back in the day at Square Dance in the heyday. People used to come 20 minutes early and stay 20 minutes late. Now, nobody seems to do that. At least here in central Pennsylvania, nobody comes early. Nobody sticks around. They come right on time. They leave after the 50-50 drawing, they're out of there, or after the last tip. We used to have 3-hour dances. In my area, we're lucky if we can get 2 hours. But you know the people in your club that you can depend on. You know the people who are your class, who you can push, you can strive to get them. You know they can do that. And you know sometimes when you put your microphone down and you look out, here comes a dancer doing a beeline right to you. You know he's going to critique or criticize what you're going to do. Everybody has them. And if you haven't had these kinds of people, I bless you now, because you will in the wonderful, wild, and wacky world of square dancing. So the next part I'm going to talk about with personalities, it's kind of a fun little time management and prioritizing thing, which this is going to lead into my third part of scenarios and situations. So I know some of you like to take notes. Great time to take notes, or to, I think we're recording this, so you'll have it anyways. But I'm going to ask Mark to throw the next image up. So now with those personalities, different people deal with different situations in different ways. That's a mouthful there. I'll say that again. Different people deal with different situations in different ways. I think I got some.
Just lose you, Cory? I think we just lost the connection to Cory, but hopefully he'll be right back.
Yeah, he dropped out.
Yeah, I think he's been having some trouble with the bandwidth. I'm not sure what it is, but hopefully he'll be right back in. In the chat, I posted the link to that personality test and the matrix that Cory was talking about, the different types of personalities to identify your own. There's another one, it's called DISC, D-I-S-C, which is personality profiling, which deals with the same kind of concepts of personalities. Very, very good thing to look at, and very, very meaningful to understand what kind of personality you are. And if you can identify other people's personalities, it gives you the ability to approach them the way they like to be approached. Come on, Cory, what's happening here? Let's see what's happening.
I did the disc one at work, and my boss actually got me in the office to do an assessment of him. And his assessment of himself was completely different from what my assessment of him was. So it's really interesting. Scary.
You're fading out there, Ross. You're coming in and out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, at work, I had to do an assessment of my boss with the disc of what sort of personality he was. And a bit scary, but my assessment of him was quite different to what his own assessment of himself was. He actually got a bit of a surprise with it. So interesting how we see ourselves and how other people see us as well.
Absolutely. on. Where is the link? Yeah, Cory just sent me a message. He's dropped out. So 1 second.
All right, just sent him the link.
Oh, did you? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I did, I'm a certified human behavioral consultant, and we deal with the DISC model of personality profiling. But in the US, a lot of the command generals, they actually have these very detailed personality profiles done, and they give that to all their commanders, not so that they can understand them better, but mainly so that they understand how this person likes to be approached, how they like to have information. So if you have, for instance, one of those green personalities that Cory was talking about, they're not the kind of person that wants you to come in their office and talk about fishing and how was your weekend. They want, I have a problem, here's some solutions, here's an idea. What do you think? And they make decisions very quickly, whereas.
Am I back?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, I'm using my cell phone now, so I don't know what my coming in clear.
You're coming in okay, but you'll have to slow down a bit while you're speaking because you're getting choppy on the band.
Anybody there? All
Yeah,
right.
I can hear you.
I need meeting ID number. Do we know it? Yeah, you're going too far with the slides.
Yeah, I know. I was just going back up.
What's the meeting ID
899.
number?
899.
Yeah,
It's 899 space 8004 space 3470.
let me see if that works. One of my kids' friends is trying to call them and I got bumped off. This should do it. Thank you.
Incidentally, when I tried to click on the link the
Okay.
last few times, I didn't get in. I had to use the ID number, point of information.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. It's been doing that. Sometimes it works for some people.
Okay,
Other times it doesn't. So I don't know why it's doing that.
I'm back. Anybody there?
Yeah, we can hear you, Cory.
Sorry. So let's go to the frame that has, let me see. Yeah, right there. Perfect. So I'll try to pick up where I last left off here. Okay, so talking about the personalities, I said different people deal with different situations in different ways. Now, having said that, our personalities play a major role in how we prioritize things, events, issues. So President Eisenhower, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, we called him Ike. He, this is years ago, probably, almost 70 years ago, 65, 70 years ago. He followed this simple and interesting matrix that can help all of us in prioritizing and time management. I could do a whole session on this, but I'm just going to briefly touch on it. Like I said, I'm going to touch briefly on the personalities in this. So I'm going to give you a situation that could happen at a square dance. And now remember, I may deal with it similar to the way you do or completely different, depending on the scenario. Meaning something may be important and urgent to me, but not to the dancers, or it may be important and urgent to the dancers, but not to me. But being a leader, folks will watch how I handle the situation. So here's the 4 categories President Eisenhower had this down in. Important, urgent. In the green, it's important, not urgent. Down in the red, not important, urgent, or not important, not urgent. All right, so we're going to take that slide down and we're going to put the next one up because we're going to play a little game. Here are 4 possible situations that have happened at a square dance. Now, how would you label them? I'll give you some time while I tell you, I'll tell you my viewpoint. So here they are. This could, and it's happened. You get to the dance and you forgot your singing calls. Well, back in the day, we had records, and sometimes people would show up and not have their singing calls, or sometimes they didn't have their patterns. Could you go through a whole dance just using pattern music? Can you, let's just say you get to the dance and you forgot your music. The next situation that we're going to categorize these in the important, not urgent, not important, urgent. Okay. Another thing, coffee pot is broken. Oh man, has that happened? I can still see some of the dancers and how they acted to that. There's a third one. They're out of toilet paper in the ladies' room. Okay. Now I'm thinking of myself right now. Okay. It's happened more times than I can imagine. Or here's the fourth situation. It's a plus dance, but the majority are mainstream dancers. So those are the four different things, okay? You get to the dance, forget your music, coffee pot's broken, they're out of TP in the ladies' room. You're thinking it's a plus dance and everyone's mainstream. So, Mark, if you could put up the next slide for me there, buddy. So while you're thinking about that, I'm going to tell you how I would label these. This is just me, okay? Because now I'm not just thinking about myself, because I'm thinking to my, if this was me personally, the ladies' room not having any toilet paper is not that important to me. But I'm thinking for everybody now, because I'm the caller, I'm the leader. Urgent and important. No toilet paper in the get that toilet paper in there. I remember the one time we had to use paper towels because we couldn't find the janitor. This is just mine. You might put that under a different category. Forgetting the singing calls, forgetting the music. It's important to me, but it's not urgent, because I've been calling long enough that if I get to a dance and I don't have any music, I can still do a workshop. I could still dance the people. I could still have enough material that I could maybe have fun teaching something new. Maybe I'll pull off a challenge call and decide to teach them. I've done that before. I've done some walk and talks, you know, I've done that. Some other times I've shown up, if I forgot my music, there's seems to be another caller there. I got music, I got you covered, no problem. I don't forget my music a lot, but there was one time I didn't have certain music with me, and I remember my house was just around the corner of the hall. So the round dance cuer started queuing. I says, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, it's important, but it wasn't urgent. Might be different for some of you. Broken coffee pot. I am not a coffee drinker. So it's not important, but boy, was it urgent to a lot of dancers. So that's how I categorize that. Not important, but it's urgent. And to me, personally, not important, not urgent, that's mainstream dancers at a plus dance. I prepared for a plus dance. I got there. The dancers were struggling with AC-doocies and spin chain the gears. Well, then we're just going to have a mainstream dance. I know a lot of callers out there that can call a mainstream dance, and it's maybe labeled a plus dance. Dancers don't even have any idea, because you're dancing them and they're having a blast. So that's mine. Go ahead, Mark, you can get rid of that. But you probably had maybe similar. Maybe yours were completely different. So keeping that same Eisenhower's matrix in mind, we know there's different personalities and different ways to categorize them and prioritize them now. Now I'm going to tell you some situations that have happened to me and to some of my buddies, and tell me if they happen to you or similar. Now, when I'm done, I can't wait to hear some of the situations and stories that maybe you have and how you tackled them. But these are actually expect the unexpected that happened at a square dance for me. And I want to see if I can get some of your faces up here, because the way I'm doing this is I can't see anybody. There we go. So those were 4 scenarios right there that we just put up. 4 situations. Shake your head up and down or side to side. Have any or all of these situations ever happened to you at a dance that we just did? Forgot the music? Forgot, had a break the time? Toilet paper, never had anybody? You're thinking it's going to be one certain program that you're calling, and the next thing you know, you end up calling an entire different dance. Well,
That
here's
only
some more
happens on
situations.
days that end with Y.
What's that?
I said that only happens on days that end with the letter Y.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we could turn on the people's mics if they want to talk to me. I sat down again and I was talking to some guys. I figured I'll come up with 10 or 20 different situations or scenarios. And I asked before I knew it, I had guys tell me, you got to tell them about the time that this happened. You got to tell them what and how they handled it. Okay, so here's a couple here. Okay, how many have got to your dance, to call your dance, and you got to the building and the building was locked? You couldn't get in. Most everybody's on freeze frame for me. Mark, you're the only, or Mel, you're the only one that's moving. Everybody else is in a freeze frame, so I can't tell what everybody's saying.
There was a few hands that came up there.
Yeah.
Bill's got both hands up and waving. Bill
And it's
Ackerman.
happened, and I'm sure it's happened before. Well, I can tell you a dozen times that it happened. One time it happened at the hall that we were at. We got on the phone. We were able to get the janitor to come in and open up the hall.
I have twice had people break into the building.
Break in.
This was a second story job.
Oh my gosh. There was one time we had a dance. We got there, it was closed. It was the middle of summertime. I just set my equipment outside and we danced outside. It depends on who you are and how you handle. Is anybody else to a gig one time and the place was locked and you couldn't get in and the whole hall is set up for a banquet, not a square dance?
Yeah, Cory, you're going to have to slow down just a bit because your bandwidth is not keeping up to your voice.
Yes.
I've arrived at least twice at where the dance was supposed to be, only to find out that they'd moved it and had forgotten to tell me.
Yep.
One time, and it was great because we were running late, and the car came driving in as we're trying to figure out where we should be. Car came driving in and the people said, "Oh, we're so sorry, we forgot to tell you." And Roy said, "Yeah, we've been driving around for 20 minutes trying to figure out where it was." It was a lie.
Yep.
The lockout thing happens a lot. Sometimes when you wind up having a dance like outside, people decide it's more fun out there anyway.
Yeah.
One of the things that's happened to me on a number of occasions where I was living in Canada, the weather was very often a frequent factor in designing dances. So I always carried my equipment with me, as did most callers over there, because you'd show up at a dance and the caller that's booked in is snow delayed or something's going on. So you're set up, you may call one or two tips before that caller shows up, and then you just leave your equipment set up. So it's always good to, carry your equipment with you. But that's a frequent occurrence.
We arrived at our hall to find that the electricity was out, but only in one section of one block. So ours wasn't out 6 blocks away, but the hall had no electricity. So we went home and got an inverter and ran the dance off the car battery, putting the extension cord out the window. So the car was in the parking lot, and we ran it off two different car batteries.
Go to a dance just expecting to dance, and the caller at the dance's last laptop crashes and he doesn't have a backup. So you have to run out to your car and get your own laptop and bring it in and let him use it.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm just
Quickly write a book.
here. Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt here for a second. Hang on,
Thinking,
Cory.
Betsy, at all the years.
Sorry, I was just going to interrupt here for a second. For those of you that are raising your hand or whatnot, Cory just sent me a picture of his screen. He's got very low bandwidth or something's going on, and he's got the same problem I have. He does not have anybody's pictures. He's got a little grid with your name in it, and the screen is black. So if you want to say something or add in, please just unmute yourself and chime up. I'll try and control it as best I can, or Mark will. And try and keep the conversation going, but if you wave, Cory's not going to see you. Go ahead, Cory.
And Betsy and Roy, I'm sure you guys could write a book about illustrated.
Also,
Several books.
I never
Betsy
forgot my
just talked about it.
I never forgot my music, but when we had records, people were helping us pack up the dance the night before, and we had different color vinyl covers for the record cases, and they put the wrong covers on the cases. So I arrived at my dance with Roy's round dance records, and Roy arrived at his dance, which was somewhere else, with my square dance records. So
I think that would have been easier for you than it would have been for him.
well, he was teaching. What were you teaching, Roy?
During the pre-rounds, Bruce Bush was the caller. I taught
Anybody there?
I taught a jive to Bop using his singing call for the same dance.
In the meantime, I'm calling patter to a two-step until the caller's wife, Bruce's wife, it was only like 20 minutes away. She drove up, brought me my case, took his case, and that solved everything.
Uh-huh.
This session is certainly living up to its title.
Yeah, really. Expect the unexpected. Everything shooting out for me here. Betsy talked about one, and it's happened to me before. You're in the middle of or get to a dance and the electricity's out. I've been calling a dance in the middle of July and the air conditioner went out. We had 15 squares. And opening the doors and using oscillating fans didn't do it. Didn't work. Or the heat went out and you're dancing in the cold weather. Here's one. You get to the dance, but you arrive in the wrong night. Has that happened before? That's happened.
A 4-hour drive, actually.
Oh my. Here's one. This depends on personalities again. You arrive at the dance to call a dance, and there's another caller there who's booked on the same night.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if everybody's professional, you work together and it's wonderful, beautiful. Everyone comes together in harmony. But sometimes I've showed up and the other caller doesn't want to have anything to do with me. And sometimes it gets ugly, but I just say, okay, I came this far. I got a free dance. I'll come and dance. And it's happened. Or double booked.
Sorry, I blanked out your video because you're still a bit choppy. So I've stopped your video. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, that might help a little bit. I don't know what's going on, but I think your kids are using the internet, playing games and the phone and everything else at the same time.
Hey guys.
That's what I do. I always blame my kids, even if it's not them.
Yeah, see if you can turn off the video on your end, Cory.
Turn off the video. Start video.
Well, yeah, okay. If you see a start video button, then it's already turned off, I guess.
The camera in the bottom left-hand corner. You just click it, it'll stop video. I've turned it off from my end. I've turned your camera off.
All I have is start video.
Yeah, that's because I've turned it off on your end already. But you're coming through a lot clearer. Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay. Continue.
Yeah, your vocals coming through, but slow down your speaking a bit just to make sure that we're going to pick it all up.
Okay, because here we go. So you get to a dance. This has happened to me. But what if this happens to you? How would you do? What would you do? What would you do? I want to know what you would do. You get to a dance and there's a dancer in a wheelchair. And this dancer wants to dance every tip. What do you do? I can't see anybody, so you have to chime in.
I don't see anybody's hands up. I don't see anybody waving. So if you do have an answer or your answer, speak up, please.
Well, me being that I've worked with handy capables for 20 years, I would make it work. But if you're a newer caller or a veteran caller and you're not used to something like this, it's an A2 dance. This person in a wheelchair can maneuver himself in that wheelchair fine, and he's an A2 dancer too, and they show up to your dance. But the timing is going to be a little bit different. What do? I'm just preparing you now. If something happens next week and you can call in a dance and all of a sudden people show up in a wheelchair, don't you come yelling at me. I'm just trying to prepare you.
Could I say something?
Sure.
Absolutely.
I would probably go to the club president and ask what they would like me to do.
I agree.
So you get other people involved with the decision making.
If I'm hired to do their dance, they probably know this person and they know what they expect of me. I've spent a lot of years calling to strange groups, not strange strangers, other people's clubs. Some of them
I
were,
think both work, Daryl.
some of them were strange, but that would be a strange situation. And I don't know of any real good way to handle it other than finding out what they expect you to do. They're paying your wages.
Couldn't you try a tip to see how the person handles it? Because otherwise you're prejudging their capabilities and you'd probably have to adjust your timing to allow a little bit.
Very good. Very good. These are all good answers. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I just love to hear what different people do in different situations.
I'm calling for a club, and they have one in a wheelchair, a lady, and they all know it. They love her, and she's involved. And the only adjustment I have to make as a caller is be careful with the walking Dutches and the do-si-do. Otherwise, she's pretty fast with the wheelchair. So if you keep it nice and weaving, circling movements, she's pretty good with the timing as well.
In my first year of calling, I was running a beginner class and a person who was blind turned up amongst the beginners. And so that was a challenge. That was a real challenge.
Put me back on.
I had someone in actually a motorized wheelchair. She was more seriously impaired than just an ordinary wheelchair person. In a class I was teaching, everyone understood it in advance. She was part of the cohort or the social group of the class, and everyone was cool about it. And she was very smart and very fast. So this wasn't unexpected. For unexpected stuff, I haven't been in that situation, but I would say that I would not go to the club president and ask what to do. It's my job to handle the situation. I would wait for the club president to come to me and give me advice if they want to. But until then, I have to figure out what to do. And I would make do as best I could.
Yeah.
Another good answer. And then put back the mindset, like I said earlier in this session. Is it a call or run club where you call all the shots, or is it a club run? That makes a difference with a lot of these scenarios. Here's another one. Oh, go ahead.
Hey, Jeff, stop. You got to stop sharing your screen there, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. So here's another one. You're calling a dance and a rookie caller shows up or a veteran caller shows up and they're attending your dance. I at least acknowledge that they're there because they come in, and if it's a caller run club or if it's a club run club, you don't have to have them come up and call a tip. A lot of times, and this was just on Facebook as a question the other day. Somebody said a new caller comes to my dances and he's always bringing his music and his laptop. Well, I don't think that's really good etiquette. When I was a kid, we kept our records out in the car. We went to the dance, and if the caller said, "Hey, Cory, come up and call a tip," I ran out, got my records, and then went up there. I did not go in with my records smirking that, ha ha ha, I'm going to call a tip. So a lot of these newer callers need to know you don't go to a dance with your laptop intending on calling a tip. What do you do? What do you do if a rookie caller or a veteran caller shows up at your dance? Or a queuer. If a queuer just comes to dance, I always acknowledge that queuer is at my dance. I will say over to the microphone maybe at the end of the dance, it was very nice to have so-and-so come and join us tonight. It goes back to showmanship, which is a totally different session you can have with these really cool caller sessions that you're having on showmanship. You just make yourself look better, and look at that. You just put this person who came in to support you at a dance. You just gave them the limelight a little bit, that you acknowledge that they're at your dance. New or old, it doesn't matter.
Bill Silver, you had a comment?
Yeah, well, when we're talking about if a call, I
can see everybody's smiling face again. That's really good. So you did your homework for a dance, but nothing you prepared for is working at all. You did your research. You knew you were coming in. Let's say you had to teach Relay the Deucey or something like that. You get there, you prepared, you go in, you start teaching it. You try to teach it several different ways. So, because different people learn in different ways, nothing's working. Has that happened to you before? Maybe it's called an off night.
There's a bit of a time lag there, Cory. Bill Silver was about to make a comment on your last comment, but I think there's a time lag. So,
Go ahead.
Bill, if you had a comment.
Well, all I was going to say is I had a club in Sacramento, and guest caller, his name was Vic Carey. He called the dance, but there was another caller in the hall. And what Vic did was he had us come up and share a couple of tips. One tip with me and one tip with the other gentleman. My own feeling about it was if there was one caller in the hall of all the dancers, there was one guest caller, I didn't have a problem with inviting the caller to call a tip. But you get into more than that there. Then you're right into there. Who do they pay to call the dance? They paid you to call the dance. So, if there are two or three or four callers in the hall, don't even not like Cory said, and I agree, acknowledge them. But no calling. Okay, that's all. No problem. Thank you.
And that's also if it's a Saturday night special, or if it's just a regular dance that you have. That changes things too. If it's a regular dance with a regular group, then the person can call a tip. Not a problem. I have no problem. But if, like Bill said, if you're the hired gun, you're coming in and you're doing a big, flyers have gone out and everything, that Bill's coming in to call. Exactly. You're the hired person.
And one more. I'm sorry.
So I know when I was calling on a regular basis in Canada, if it was my club, I made the decision, and I always acknowledge every caller that's come in, thank them for coming, the same as I try and acknowledge every dancer. If it's a club that I'm hired to call for on a regular basis, I set those parameters up with the club beforehand. If we have a out-of-town guest caller, I will invite them to do a tip. If we have, and in my case, we had 4 local callers that were regular dancers at my club, and I just arranged with them. I says, I'll get one of them to call up and we'll rotate through. If I was hired to do a dance, as Bill said, I was hired to do a dance. If, for instance, Cory came to my dance and he's come all the way from the States and he's visiting Australia, I would tell the club president, hey, this guy's a caller, he's from here. Is it okay if I invite him up to dance? I know when I went to New Zealand, I went to a dance, I was asked to come and call a tip at one of these dances. That is a big to do, but I agree with you, Bill. If you're hired to do a dance, you're hired to do a dance. Before you get somebody else to call, talk with the people that hired you, and you better have a good reason if you want to share that mic, unless it's advertised accordingly. It's easy to set those 3 tiers.
Yeah, what I would do if somebody came to me and it was an officer-run club, and they wanted to call a tip, I would direct them to the officers because it's not my decision. If it's my dance that I run, then it's my decision. But otherwise, it belongs to the decision belongs to the officers.
As far as acknowledging, you always acknowledge people. Your job is to find all the callers, figure out who they are, and acknowledge them all. Seek them out. Be sure you don't drop anyone. Someone once dropped me from the list, and everybody was apologizing for the rest of the night. As far as, oh, I brought my records in, can I call a tip? No, you leave the records in the car. If I want you to call a tip, I will let you know. Bringing your records in, asking to call a tip, like a hungry puppy dog, that is just very tacky.
Right.
But as far as
I'd like to add something to that, Bill.
Yeah.
Where I was in Northern Canada, leaving your records in the car where it's minus 68 degrees is not a good idea. Or when I was in Africa, leaving your record in the car where it's about 55 degrees Celsius. So we're talking about 140, 150 degrees or whatever it is. I have no problem with that. I don't have a problem with callers taking their computer into the room or their record box in the room, but you do it in such a way that's dignified. You take your coat off in the cloakroom, you put your coat over your record box, you walk in, you set it down at the back of the hall, or you put your computer in a backpack and you set it gingerly behind your chair. You never go to the dance expecting a call, but I know what you mean. I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. I meant bringing the records in a symbolic sense.
I know what you mean. I've been to dances where callers would bring their record box. You're in the middle of a tip. They arrive late. They bring their record box and they set it up on the stage, look at you, say hi, and then go put their coat away. I said, "Oh, hi."
Tacky. That is probably tacky.
I got
I
had one too.
In that particular case, what I did is I picked up the record box, went through. So, oh, these are great. I've never done this record. I pulled one of the records out of his records, which was mine. That's great. Oh, I got to talk to you after this dance. I got to get these labels. I didn't ask him to call, but I went through his record box on the stage in front of everybody.
Hold on.
Stephen Potter, you've got your hand up, and then somebody else had I think Betsy had a comment, and then Brian had a comment.
The good thing about Squareview, you got a thumb drive. You can have all your music on it and take it with you to the dance. And nobody knows you have it with you. And if you get invited, then you pull it out and put it in.
And you can load the program with all your settings on it for your records, which is good. Betsy, you had a comment?
And another thing, I have people have asked me to call, let's say within the past 10 years, I politely decline and I say, I'm here to dance. I came because I want to dance to you. Thank you very much for offering for me, but I came to dance. And that's what newer callers will jump on the opportunity to call. But those of us who have been calling a while, I rarely do I go up and call a tip. I came to dance to you. Thank you. Very politely decline. But go ahead, Bets.
I have one of the ultimate tacky things. This newer caller came to a dance that I was doing, and I invited her to call a tip, and then she went around to everybody and passed out her business cards.
I have another thing about Stephen Stick. I would never ever would anybody put a stick in my computer again. I once had that, and he, a very fine colleague of mine, fellow caller, he had a stick with the Squareview on there, and see the laptop I'm calling with never ever seen the internet, and I keep it clear and sober, and within 15 years I had no problems with it. And when he put that Squareview stick in there, boy, it blew the system. I had to reboot everything, and it was gone. So I think whenever you should have your own system with you, okay? Even if the stick would work, but I think it would best work on a computer where Squareview is pre-installed as well. I'm working with the caller Keddy, so I don't know what happened, but it somehow just blew everything, and we had to restart. So you got to be careful with someone putting your stick in your system. So,
Hey, I'm going to read a few more of these, and I'll do a few of them because I got a bunch here. And let me see if this has happened to anybody here. Here's one. You're in the middle of calling, and one of the dancers trips, slips, or faints, passes out. Just show me hands. Okay. I'm just going to move along a little bit, though. I have these all written down, and I'll make sure I send these to Mel and Mark to put them up on some type of a website or Facebook so you can see them. Here's some other ones here. Does this happen to you? Let's say it's a Tuesday night. You called and you were fantastic. You were calling like Tony Oxidine, Tom Miller, and Tim Mariner. You were just wonderful. And then the next night you're out and you are absolutely awful. Oh, I never called to the caliber of Tony and Tom, but you were on cloud 9, and then the next day you're calling and you stink. But how about this one? You only have half a square that shows up. Only 2 couples. Just a regular dance. You dance them?
Absolutely.
Maybe not 2 hours, but we dance them. Here's one. I'm going to put all 4 of these together because it kind of works its way up. Escalates, I guess is the word I want to say. So a dancer disagrees or complains about a certain call or formation that you called. Heaven forbid. An annoying dancer is bothering other dancers. And a physical fight breaks out between dancers. Any of those ever happen?
Had a physical fight break out between 2 callers.
Yes. And once again, I'm going to go back to saying what I did early on. It's a hobby for most of us. It's a hobby.
Your first 2 scenarios, Cory, I've had that happen. Not the third one. Haven't seen a fight.
In this case, a caller and his current fiance had a very bad breakup. She came to the dance with another caller. They got into a fight and she left with a third one. So you had enough of both of them. I've got Brian, Bill, Jeff, and then Daryl's got his hand up. So we'll start with Brian Hotchkiss.
I didn't really, I think I was just waving.
Oh, sorry.
But I've had a situation where I was calling and a dancer dropped dead on the floor, which wasn't very nice. And of course it destroyed the whole session. It happened in the very first number that I was calling. It was in Switzerland, and the very first number in the first. I don't know what it was I called that caused it, but it happened in the first probably 30 seconds, and the square did the signal that something had happened in the square, so we stopped. And this poor guy was lying on the ground, and he probably, I don't know, wasn't dead at that stage, but they called the ambulance, and after about 3/4 of an hour, they declared that he had passed on, and it was a very sad situation and just destroyed the whole session.
Very, very sad things that happened. Bill Ackerman, you had a comment? No? Jeff Garbutt, were you just waving or?
I was still waking up. I'm wiping the sleep out of my eyes.
Oh, okay. Daryl Clendenin and then Steve Potter.
Yes, you were talking about fights. I did see one night, had one at a workshop that I was calling. Some people don't like to get pulled through a square. Yeah. That one we got taken care of. But the one that I remember more than anything else was before I was a caller, we staged a fight right in front of the caller one night. I had it all set up, and I'll tell you what, that upset that caller quite a bit, almost as much as the night that we turned a live pig loose in the dance. Oh, geez. I was hungry back then. I really was. I've calmed down considerably since those days, and both true stories. They were fun.
I'm glad you've never come to one of my dances, Daryl.
Yeah, I have been.
Oh, you did. You did.
Yes.
You did in Portland.
Yes, you bet.
And from stories Jim Mayo told, I always thought Tony was the bad guy before he turned.
I've got Steve Potter, and then just before Steve gets there, Cory just sent me a message. You got booted out again. I'm just going to say, it says, we can talk about all these. Is you're calling a dance and the fire alarm goes off in the middle of calling and the dance hiccups, or you get the hiccups in the middle of calling. You're contracted to teach 5th or 6th graders in school, only to find out that gym teachers have been teaching square dancing incorrectly for the past few weeks, and the students, it's not what they've been taught. You're booked in to call a dance and you're staying at a hotel, but really you're staying overnight at a dancer's house. And you don't want to do that. There's all sorts of different types of situations that have come up to all of us. I know there's a few callers that will they don't like staying at other people's house. They'll come and call, but they only will stay at hotels. And Cory's also said, let them know that when he's calling for the handy-capable squares, you have to expect the unexpected every single night, with outbursts of mood swings, seizures, all sorts of things. It's always good to, if you are a caller, to have a CPR certificate or take basic first aid. I would highly recommend that to everybody. So I passed those comments. I've sent them the link to get back in, but we'll carry on the discussion. I just want to let everybody know it's now 10 o'clock. We're 1 minute past the hour. So that's our time allocation. We're not going, but that's our time allocation. If you've only allocated 1 hour, by all means, don't feel obligated that you have to stay, but you're more than welcome to stay. We'll keep going as long as you guys want to talk about it. Steve Potter and then Jeff Garbutt.
Before I say what I was going to say, when Marshall Flippo would come to San Antonio, some of the dancers and all would, or the callers would argue who got to host him for the night, because he'd spend the night at somebody's house. But the comment I was going to make is, being a firefighter for the last 35 years, I was always the one called on for emergency medical stuff. And the good thing now is for CPR, all you do is compressions, chest compressions. It's all you need to do, 2 inches deep.
Okay.
Until first responders arrive. You don't have to do mouth breathing, any of that, just compressions. And you do it to the beat of either staying alive,
yes,
or not, or another one bites the dust. But don't be saying another one bites the dust out loud.
Oh my goodness. Jeff, you had a comment.
oh yes, Brian will remember, because I'm pretty sure you were here at the 50th Australian National Square Dance Convention in Perth. We actually had a fire alarm go off, and we all got kicked out of the convention for about, I don't know, almost an hour. That's correct, isn't it, Brian?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah.
Yep.
Betsy.
All right, I have 2 fire alarm stories. One of them, I was doing a square dance party, a beginner party at a firehouse for the firemen and their friends. And the alarm went off and everybody stopped, and all the firemen went out and grabbed their equipment and went out on the trucks. And all the ladies and a couple of guys who weren't firemen who were left, we re-squared up and continued to dance. And then when the Rutgers Promenaders was on the college campus, we had an alarm go off. I think it was a bomb scare. It was a bomb scare. So we gathered the Hilton, because that was the most expensive thing. And everybody went out, and we found each other standing outside in the dark, and we squared up and danced a cappella. So the other students then got to watch us.
I think most of us have faced a situation of having to project our voices and go a cappella at a dance. I was doing one. And that was it. I lost the music. I kept losing the music. Then I lost the mic. And you go. If you've got the time and the experience, you just go. And a lot of the times, well, this happened to me at one dance. I was down in Massachusetts. I kept losing the music. Well, I didn't actually keep losing the music. What happened was the record started skipping. So I took it off and put another record on. And that one started skipping. I took it off and put another record on, realized it was the needle. But by the end of the patter call, and I had two callers come up and ask me, oh, what is that music? I love the transition. I love the changes. And it was actually 3 different records and a bad needle on my record player. But anything can happen like that.
Well, the trick to that is you just put a quarter on top of the arm and it puts the pressure on the record and the play continues playing.
Yeah, not always feasible
No.
while you're in the middle of calling.
And doesn't,
I've had that happen.
it doesn't do anything good for the record.
No, but at least it can get you through the night.
We don't have
I actually have a
quarters here in Australia.
Yeah, I have a few record sleeves that have on the sleeve of the record it says nickel, quarter, or toonie, because I have to put a different coin on it to stop them skipping. One of them was my favorite record too.
I had one I'm not sure anybody ever had. I was doing another beginner party at it was a church, at a church. And what?
It had a stage.
It had a stage, but I wasn't on the stage.
Right.
And so I plugged into an outlet that was on the wall, and I couldn't get my record player to run up to speed. It was I couldn't get the volume right, and nothing was right. I sent Roy home to get another amplifier, and finally he's wandering around, and I'm sweating bullets calling, and I had it up as fast as I could, and the record still wasn't really playing at 45. And Roy wandered around and got on stage, and there was this big wheel on the stage, and it was a.
I wonder what it was, so I started turning it.
And the music sped up. It was a dimmer wheel, and it hooked into the outlets.
So it miswired something somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a good one where I was calling for a senior citizen group. They were doing like a freebie night, and I came through and I called the call, double pass through Zoom, and as soon as I said Zoom, the person in the front of the line says, "You can't do that call." It was the president's wife. Oops. And I said, "I'll teach you afterwards what the calls are after 35 years of you dancing." And she came back to me and apologized. Yeah. She never pulled it before. Always Zooms for going in and not going out.
I was calling for a club in Sydney, and I called Heads Touch a Quarter, Ladies Run. And after the tip finished, the president came up to me and he said, "Brian," he said, "you called Girls Run." And I said, "Yes." He said, "That's right." He said, "We don't do Girls Run here." And I said, "But girls are 50% of the floor." He said, "I don't care." He said, "We don't want to do Girls Run here." So I said, well, and I'd just been engaged to call for that group permanently. And I said, well, look, if you don't want to do Girls Run, I said, you probably need to get another caller. I said, because I call Girls Run quite a lot. Anyhow, they decided to stay with me, but I thought that was a really strange thing to say, we don't want to do a particular call like that.
More common than you think, Brian. I think I've told this story before, but I was down in the New England part of the States, and I was asked to call at a club, Plus Club, and I started out with my routine of judging the floor, which is Alaman left, turn partner right to a wrong way thar. Oh, we don't do that here. And then it was followed by a box the nat. Oh, we don't do that here. And there was a number of basic calls that they don't dance there because they're a Plus Club and they don't dance that. That was really my first experience to soft plus or modified plus or whatever it is you call it, or we're calling it at the time. but it's not unusual that clubs don't do it. They don't do it in that area, so we don't call that. But as to girls run, I think it was Paul Adams. I don't know if you ever had the pleasure of meeting him, but he had a very similar situation, which, oh, we only deal with the boys doing this and the girls doing this. We don't call girls do this or boys do that. So he promised not to do it, and he called a lot of ends and centers all night.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind that sort of thing if there's a good reason for it, but I would object if they just said we don't do box the net unless there was a problem with the ladies' arms or the men's arms or something like that. If it was an elderly group, I've often gone to places and they've said we don't want you to call Yellow Rock. And I never call Yellow Rock. I occasionally will say cuddle your corner, but I will never actually call Yellow Rock. The only time I will do it is if I've got them in an ocean wave and I say swing through boys trade, girls fold, and give him a sneaky cuddle from behind, give him a Yellow Rock from behind. And then I say, now boys, turn around, get down on one knee and say thank you. And they seem to accept that, except a lot of fellas can't get down on one knee because they've got arthritis or something like that. But that's about the only time I would do that.
Yeah, if they get down, they may not come back up.
Just call heads half sachet and square through, and then call a Yellow Rock.
Are we telling true stories?
Yep, absolutely.
This is just share what's happened. I always thought, it would be fun to have about a half a dozen of the real traveling callers. And you mentioned Flippo. He'd know more darn stories than anybody else, but just sit around and do a round robin with them. But I'll tell you a true story. I was on one of my cross country tours, and I did a dance in South Dakota. And I had kind of a fun thing that I used to do. I'd walk up behind somebody like Bill Silver there, a guy that's sitting down during a break or something. I'd lean over behind him and I'd put two fingers on the back of his head and go like that. And of course they would turn around real quick. And I say, was it good for you too? And we'd all get a chuckle out of it. Or sometimes there would be a gal that had a low cut back dress, not go up and right on the back of their neck. I would do the same thing. Now, mind you, I always made sure that there were a lot of dancers around watching it so that everybody get a laugh. I mean, what good would, and I was prepared for someday to get slapped, which never happened, but I was prepared for it. But I did it to this gal in South Dakota. And about a week and a half or so later, after I got back home again, I got this call from, well, at the time, Mr. White was still the General Secretary of Color Lab. He said, Daryl, we've got a complaint about you. What? Well, there was this gal in South Dakota that said that you kissed her on the back of the neck. And she sent in a complaint to Color Lab about it. And of course, my good friend, Mr. Jerry Junk, was the chairman at that time. And of course, Jerry knew me well enough to know what I'd been doing. And he told White what it was. And we all got a laugh out of it. But I did turn around. I wrote a nice letter to this gal apologizing, explaining to her what I did and everything. Sometimes you kind of have to watch out or be prepared for something that you expect, right?
It's perception, because perception is reality.
Yeah, I guess. But that's a true story.
Mickey, you had your hand raised there, or were you just?
I was just saying, but I've got another true story as well to tell. So because he said something that somebody had a hiccup when calling.
Yeah, that was Cory.
Yeah, I usually only drink water when calling. But years and years ago, when I had a big special dance going on, and I was drinking a Coke within a break I had, and I was calling, and I tell you what, the air made its way, and there was no chance of getting the microphone away, and I had a big belch coming out, and it was right at the end of the pattern, and everybody was just looking at it, and I was just big eyes and kind of scared or whatever, and tried to excuse, and then everybody was just looking, and then they started to laugh, and I said, well, that was your singing call, but it came out all at once. So that cleared out. And
I
had
was,
a good
waiting, I was
time
wondering
back
how
then.
you would handle it. I thought you might have said, oh, sorry, that's my mistake. I should have said heads do that first.
No, I thought what there was a singing call, but it came out all at once. So,
That's just as good. Cory has just sent me a message. He's giving 100,000 apologies. He's going to try and get back in to say goodbye to everybody and join the discussion, but he is having problems with his iPad. If he does come in, he'll be on his phone. But I personally, if he's unable to come in, I want to take this time to thank him personally for coming in, again, sharing the idea of expecting the unexpected and initiating the discussion of this can happen, and everything that can happen will happen to all of us at least one time or another. We all have weird and wonderful stories to tell. And when you're a caller, the only time that you should expect the unexpected to happen is on days that end with the letter Y, as long as you're spelling those days in English. As I was very quickly corrected and pointed out, well, you don't spell it that way over here. It is something that happens. And just by the fact that we still got 30 people in here sharing stories, I think it's great for newer callers and other callers. It's great to know that you're not alone. This stuff will happen to you. And if you expect it, you'll know how to deal with it. Anticipate, prepare, and you'll always be left high and dry and be able to share a good story later. So Cory, thank you very much. As always, Mark, thank you very much for doing all the work. Mark is actually the host of this session right now, because I'm like Cory, I have to dial in through my phone. And stick around, the discussion's only beginning, but thank you very, very much, everybody, for coming in. And we're going to go to Betsy.
Okay, I am on. I thought of one that happened. I don't normally use a lot of notes, but this one time I think I'd written something fancy, non-symmetric, and I was reading the notes. I had them on the table. They were big enough I could see until I popped out a contact lens. Now I can't see my notes, and I am trying to discreetly feel around on my dress to find out where the contact lens got to. And it was just like, what do I do now? So I looked out of the other eye and I got them through it, and I ended the tip. And then we found, and I said, guys, I lost my contact lens. Come help me look. But it was like,
can everybody just move over to that side of the floor? Because I can only see out of one eye.
Yeah, well, that would have been next. But we found it.
Yeah. Cory has just sent a message that if any of you guys are going to be at the Color Lab convention in April, let you know that his Handy Capable Club will be doing a demonstration on Sunday, the 10th of April in Pittsburgh at the convention. Drop in and see, because there is a fair bit of, well, not a fair bit, there's a substantial difference between regular calling for the handy capable and calling for somebody that has a disability. Some of them can integrate. I remember my favorite people with disability story included myself. We were in a square at one of the conventions in Germany, and of the 8 people, 7 people had casts on and 1 was dancing with a cane. So, and we got through it. I had to get my cast changed when I got back, but that was beside the point. Anyone else? Yolanda?
So I was out of town one time, and it was in the middle of summer, and there was a plumbing problem, and all of a sudden the ladies, all of the toilets started gushing like crazy, and I had to quickly grab all the crinolines that were on the floor, because where they were used to taking them off, and so toss them all into the hallway, tell all the ladies to start turning off the toilets, and then had to find where the janitor's closet was and clean it up, and had to then find a toilet somewhere else so that the dance could go on. I mean, it was very interesting to say the least.
I can believe it.
I've never called to a disabled square, but early in my calling career, I had a square of dancers on roller skates, which was a little different. The roller skate centre in Newcastle, Australia, asked me if I would come and teach square dancing to them. So we had all these very experienced roller skaters, and they wanted to learn square dancing. So we taught them square dancing. We called them the rolling squares. So that was a very interesting experience. That was 40 years ago now, though, so a long, long time ago, but a very interesting experience.
Funny how names take place, because we had some rolling squares over here in Germany, close to Munich, and it was a wheelchair group. Yeah.
In a very informal one square group at MIT a long time ago, one of the dancers, as a joke, on a unicycle. Square through was interesting. You move forward, you turn on the spot, and then move forward. And turning on the spot on a unicycle is not easy.
Yeah.
I think they had a lady on a unicycle in Salzburg, Austria, in the club there. She came and danced in the square there from time to time. Very interesting.
Hello, I've got a true story. Back in the days when we were using only records and with needles and things, and we were invited to go from England to Neu-Isenburg near Frankfurt to a town twinning celebration. And in the evening of the Saturday evening, there was the big dinner with all the two mayors of the two towns there, and all the dignitaries from the town, and the coach load of people from England had included a band, and they had all set up their instruments on the stage, and so I was on the floor to do our demonstration, and we set up with a table, and the square was in the middle of the front of the stage, and when they started dancing, my needle kept jumping, and I thought, oh, what's the matter with this? So I started it again, and the record I was using was Happiness, 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 that one,
Sting records.
Yeah. And so what we realized was that there was actually one of the stages that came up could be raised in front of the big stage to make it a bigger stage, and I was half on and half off it, and when the dancers were dancing on it, it was jumping up and down. So of course it caused quite a laugh in the hall with all the mayors and everything, and we got a good big round of applause afterwards. But when we loaded into the coach the next morning, when we arrived there, the whole coach sang Happiness. It was so embarrassing.
That may seem embarrassing, but that's when you know you did it right, because they're carrying that tune from the night before.
Really funny,
that's a positive memory for them.
It was, yeah, very funny. Oh, we had two nights ago, 2 weeks ago, we had in our club where we are in Buckingham, there was a man digging a hole for the electricity up the road, and of course all our electricity went off. The hall was cut off. So we had to get someone to go up and tell him to put it back again, please. So we'd actually danced in the dark. It was quite exciting. Thank you. Okay, that's my stories.
Yeah, I was going to say that I put in the chat, there was a message from Reinhold Rodick, who is the programmer designer of Colorama, He's still working through, there was an update that just came out recently. So if you've got
Mel?
the active update on it, yes?
You sent it to me.
Did I?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll make the announcement if I can here. Anyway, see if this works. Goodness gracious, everyone. There you go. Yeah, from Reinhold, the updates had some repercussions. He's working on getting them fixed, but by all means, please send them. Any changes or any issues that you're having with it, please send Reinhold that information. Brad Christie from the session he had a couple of weeks back, same thing. He's been getting lots of feedback on different things that don't exactly work that well, and he's working on fixing those. I got a note from ESP Records. If you are looking for some new records right now, ESP's got a sale on. You can get 10 for $40 or $4 a piece for the records. And a few of the other record companies, nobody sent me anything, but a few of the others also have specials on. And also there is a number of collar schools coming up very quickly. But one of the things that was being added is in May. They're calling it the Music City Spectacular. It's in Nashville. So if you're in that area around the 20th of May, Ted Lizotte and Tony Oxendine are doing a collar school. It's got a limit of 14 callers, so book in early if you're in that area. But it also includes calling, the mechanism, showmanship, a lot of class, a lot of mic time, but also going behind the scenes about the professional side of making music, recording. And that particular collar school has a couple of sessions, and you'll actually be recording some singing calls out for publication. That's all inclusive in it. So if you're looking for that, that will be, it's called the Music City Spectacular, the 20th of May to the 24th of May in Nashville, if you're in that area. And there's a lot of other activities coming up. The Collar Lab Convention's coming up in April. We've got the Nationals coming up, and there's a lot of dances in your area. So hopefully we're all getting back to dances now. I think I've pretty much covered everything. I've got John down in the bottom.
Yeah, Brian Hodgkins can tell you about a story about the unexpected when he was releasing Itsy Bitsy Yellow Polka Dot Bikini at one of our national conventions. How many times did you restart, Brian?
Too many.
It was a new release.
Yeah, the record, there was a problem with the turntable and the record skipped. So fortunately, I was able to pick that it was skipping backwards and not forwards. So we got to the point where I just called do sa do. So I just kept on calling it do sa do, do sa do, do sa do, do sa do, and it fitted in well with the music. The dancers did get sick of doing that after a while, though.
One that I remembered was a dance I was at in Europe, and this was before I started calling. But one of the callers over there, I think it might have been Dave Prescott, but he had a every dance. It was, when you get into a rut and dancers know what to expect. He was known for always calling just the girls peel off. I think it was Dave, but don't quote me on that. But it was just the girls peel off, because peel off was in it. And that's exactly what happened. All the ladies, they had swimsuit tops on it and a jacket on. Just the girls peel off, and clothes went flying everywhere. Of course, nobody was, of course, naked, but it was just one of those things, and it just stopped them cold. Did not know what to do, and I cannot for the life of me remember who the caller was. I think it might have been Dave Prescott, but I could be wrong on that.
I had a friend of mine, Mel, in Sacramento. His club did a similar thing to him. He called Peel the Top, and all the girls took off their blouses. They had bikini tops on, but oh. How many have ever had things, dancers pull stunts to you? I had a call dance one time, and there were a couple of squares in front of me, and in the midst of the whole thing, I called ping pong circulate, and I got plummeted with ping pong balls. First scared the crap out of me, but I was involved with a exhibition square dance club in Sacramento for a few years called the Rainbow Stars. A good friend of mine, caller who passed away a couple of years ago, Ben Goldberg, was their choreographer. But he was all really busy and couldn't go to every single exhibition that the dancers wanted to go to. So he asked me if I wanted to learn how to do the choreography so that I could be on stage. So I got that done. I went up to a festival in Redding, California, and the big hall, and the dancers were lined up beside the stage. They walked out, did their little thing to get into their squares, did the thing, and the whole thing was, after that, was going to do a grand march type routine to go around, come back, go to the back of the hall, and walk out the back. The formation, the program went picture perfect. We got to that last part, and they went back to the back of the hall, but then they started, all of a sudden, they're coming back toward me. I'm looking at the paper. What did I miss? You know, there, and they come toward me. Little did I know that when they came up in front of me and lined up and proceeded to plummet me with silly string, I was covered in it. Fun. Yeah.
It happens.
It happened. Hey,
My first Fasching in Germany was like that. And Fasching is like a big week-long Christmas party for those of you that are not a Christmas party, a big week-long costume party with every town has their different costumes, their different things, but it's a big party. It goes right across the country. And square dancers over there, it was not unusual to say, right, let me just put it this way. You always make sure you're wearing underwear, never go free, because one of the things they do like to do is basically strip you down and wrap you in swaddling cloth or things like that. And it wasn't me, thankfully, but it's one of those things that happen. You never know what a club is going to plan to do to a caller over there. Yes, Brian.
I had an interesting experience in New Zealand. This is going back into the 1970s. And I was calling for the Auckland Square Dance Club, doing quite a number of things for them. And I got to know the callers over there very well, and they would play tricks on you. We'd come up and they'd dress you on the stage, or they'd partially undress you and then dress you in ladies' clothing or something like that. And they found out that one of the things that I do from time to time is turn the lights out for the last number of the night. I'll get somebody to turn all the lights out, apart from just maybe some safety lights so that people can still see what's happening. And I'll call either good night, sweetheart, or turn out the lights, the party's over, or something like that. Anyhow, the call I had, the president of the club had said to me, look, will you do that lights out thing for us tonight? And I said, sure. I said, I'll do it for the last number of the night if you'd like. And he said, no. He said, we'd like you to do it for the last number before we have supper, before we have the finger food. And I said, oh, really? I said, I don't know that it'll go all that well just then. He said, trust me. He said, we'd like you to do it then. So I agreed, and they turned the lights out and they pulled the curtains across in front of the windows so that we weren't getting any street lights or moonlight into the place, and it was absolutely pitch dark. And I started calling, and I thought they're probably going to have the callers come up onto the stage and dress me in something strange while the lights are out. So I thought they're not going to find me. So I got down and hid underneath the equipment table while I was calling. And I could hear the dancers out on the floor, their feet all moving, but there wasn't the screaming going on that sometimes happens when you're dancing with the lights out. Anyhow, when the lights eventually came on, I found there were only 4 people in the hall. Everybody else had left while the lights were out to go and organize the supper. And there were just about 4 people sitting around the hall, shuffling their feet on the floor to make it sound like there were still people there. So, and here's me underneath the table at the same time when the lights came on. So it was a bit of a surprise to everybody, I think.
So much for when he said, trust me.
Yes, never again.
Did you say Auckland or Auckwood?
Auckland,
Oh,
New Zealand.
I thought he said Oakland, California, but wait. Okay. It's like I had a situation where I was calling a dance and doing a singing call, and the dance, we got to I think it was the second time through, and I called Promenade, and they did, right out of the hall. Went out the sides, down the back, and up to the front. What did I do? I just kept right on doing the singing call. Never lost a beat.
Yes, Betsy.
They have these special badges that you do silly things to earn. And I always told the folks at the Rutgers Promenaders Club that if they were going to steal the caller's shirt, and it was mine that they were going to steal, please warn me so A, I could wear a shirt, and B, I could have something discreet underneath. So they duly warned me that they were going to steal my shirt. And I had a lovely ruffled Western shirt with snaps to make it easy. But underneath, I put on a flesh-colored leotard. So when they popped the first snaps, they thought I'd forgotten.
Some story.
And how long did it take him to realize?
Not that long. Not that long. And they did complete stealing the shirt. Roy has a story that happened. Our friend Bruce Bush, when he was calling, there was this group that always came in and did something strange on the first tip. They danced the first tip. You want to tell
They would do all kinds of stuff. They'd come in sometimes wearing flippers, fins, and dance with them. So this was like a February dance. There was all kinds of snow on the ground. They came in, and the first tip was always open, and this 4 couples always danced the first tip together. They came in carrying a cooler, and they put it in the middle of the square, and then they just stood there. And then Bruce started calling, and after a while, they stopped while Bruce is in the middle of calling, opened the cooler, and hurled snowballs at the stage. Well, Bruce immediately dove to cover his equipment, not realizing that they were styrofoam balls.
There's lots and lots, and that's actually something else that can happen. Like when Bill was talking about the silly string or snowballs or things like that do happen. A lot of dancers don't realize all that good fun back in the days of record players.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of things that had pretty severe impacts on record players because they're thinking about the fun aspect and not realizing that, yeah, you just cost me, well, at that time, $2,500 for a decent, I think, what was a 300C? $2,500 to get it shipped over to Germany.
Yeah.
No, that
One of
was a big investment. Go ahead, Roy.
One of the best tricks I ever saw, a caller playing a trick on another caller. We were doing a weekend. It was a campground. It was Betsy and Tom Miller, Bill Harrison, and myself. And Bill Harrison's getting, when you're on stage with Tom Miller, you're always wondering what the hell is he going to do to me next. But so Billy's getting ready to do a singing call, and Tom looks over and sees it's one of his records.
And it's back when we were using records.
Back when we were using records. And of course, being the round dance leader, I had my cordless microphone. So Tommy goes, well, I kind of said something to Tommy. He said, oh, great idea. We went to the back of the room, and he had my cordless mic. So Billy puts on the singing call, figuring it's the uncalled side, and Tommy starts singing from the back of the room. So Billy goes, oh, rats, and he turns the record over, figuring he put the wrong side on. Puts the needle down. It's still the singing call side. So he puts it back over again. And it took him, a couple of turnovers before he realized what Tommy was doing in the back of the room. It was fantastic.
That's good. I like that. Well, ladies, yes, go ahead, John.
Yeah, we used to have a dance at Christmas in January with Graham Rigby, one of our callers from the past. And he used to run the summer holiday camp. And Brian Hotchkiss can probably remember this, but his wife Val got him some big shoes and the toes were full of paper. Now, Graham Rigby couldn't stand still to call. He was backwards and forwards across the stage. Anyway, this day when he had the paper in the front of his shoes, 2 guys come up and nailed his shoes to the stage. And he just kept calling. And it was a fun thing.
Well, you got to have old shoes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be coming to a lull, and I'm sure we could probably stay here for the next 20 hours and share our square dance stories and still never run out. If you haven't had these events happen to you, you will. In one form or another. They're going to happen to each and every one of us at one time or another. But I want to thank you all for coming in. I especially want to thank Cory. He sent his apologies. He's really having some serious internet problems. I want to especially thank Mark for acting as host. I'm also got internet problems. I'm running this through my phone. And but Mark, once again, thank you very much for all you do, putting the sessions up, collating everything, putting them onto the OC Callers website, as well as all of Don Beck and Dan Lake's sessions and various other things. The material that Cory was had up there, the slides, I put a couple of links in the chat to the personality profiling stuff that Cory and a couple others were talking about. They're in the chat, so that I believe can be filtered out when you're there. And thanks to everybody else for coming in. We don't have a session scheduled for next week. One of the things I was actually going to be looking at doing is I want to talk about the naming and the nomenclature that we use for square dancing, not just what it is, but how to understand and why did we change it. For a lot of new callers, it's one of the biggest sources of confusion, because if I look at Mickey and I say, oh, if I got a 0 box, and I look at Daryl, and if I've got an L5 1W wave, and I look at Brian, and I says, well, if I've got a 5SW3/7 with a 1P2 PC, they'll understand what I'm talking about. But you know, they may not follow what a CB is, or why we call it a CB, or what's a CBO. You know, it is head square through 4 hands and a right and left through. Is that a corner box? Yes, it is. But it's not a CB as in a corner box 0 box. It's a corner box O, corner box as a sequence. So just understanding why that terminology is written that way, that's something I'll probably look at and then just open the floor for discussion next week. So if you have your own stories on terminology or want to have a look at it, by all means, come on in, because it should be an interesting discussion, I hope. And that's it. If you guys want to stick around and chat, by all means, keep the door open. But I don't think I've used up all the data on my phone. So I'll be fighting with Telstra tomorrow to try and get it all working again. And thank you very much for everybody for coming in. And thanks again to Mark, and thanks again to Cory. Did anybody want to stay in, Mark? I don't know if you're tied up, but Mark is acting as the host.
Yes.
I'll leave it on as long as they want to.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Mark. Bye-bye,
No worries.
folks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. I'm going to leave now, but if you do want to stay, just talk to Mark.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.